Tommy Castor. This is Sports Daily on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
And welcome into a Tuesday summer edition of Sports Daily. It's Jacob Albracht and Tommy Castor coming to you live here on KFH, on our video streams, on the internet, all kinds of good places you can find us. Glad to be here with you. Chad Chambers producing as always. The IHOP hotline is open for you. It should be a great show today. Glad to be here with you. We are wide open, and so is that IHOP hotline, 869-1240. It is the time of year where we have some time to sort of expand our wings a little bit and get into some interesting topics today. Just quite simply, as we get ready for NFL training camps and everything coming with that, how many teams actually have a chance to win a Super Bowl? That's the question, right? The NFL is a league where very seldom are we surprised, right, by Super Bowls. The Bengals most recently made it, although that was a year, I think, when we were having this conversation, I was actually pretty bullish on them, if you remember way back when. It was a good call, one of my better calls. So you never know. But, you know, like we know that the Commanders aren't going to win a Super Bowl this year. We know that, you know, there are teams like that. So who does have a chance? We'll get into that throughout the show here today. We got a College World Series in the books. LSU claims the title in non-dramatic fashion. We've got Damian Lillard maybe wanting a trade and then, you know, not wanting a trade. And I don't even know what to make of all of that. We're still waiting. I think just Friday, the official start of NBA free agency, waiting on the Fred VanVleet news. So a lot of different types of things out there. We can tell you coming up tomorrow on the program, we're going to have Christy Breadbinner on right off the start of the program. And then at about 10 o'clock, we'll bring in Paul Mills for another visit, which will be nice. It'll be good to hear from Coach Mills and see how that new group's coming together, because we really don't know, Tommy. But, hey, good morning. How are you?
I'm good. Unfortunately, the folks in my office today, all of them are in Las Vegas for our annual league meetings for the Wichita Thunder. I'm the only one on the staff not in Las Vegas right now, which, you know, it's very empty and quiet here in the office today. But I'm a little bummed out. I wish nothing against you and nothing against the show. I wish I was in Vegas right now.
How does that really make you feel? You know, you're being a great husband back here with the new baby.
Sure.
Do you feel a sense of pride here today? Like you just really proud of yourself when you come to work as everybody's out there, I'm sure, working very hard in Las Vegas.
I mean, there's a reason why they put the annual league meetings in Las Vegas, right? I mean, it's a work and it's play both. And so I went last year. It was, you know, fun and a good time. And I'm bummed I'm not there this year, but instead you get me today. So, you know, it is what it is.
Well, you know, we'll all suffer through it together then. We could have you in Vegas, but we don't. We have you here. That's okay. It's okay for everybody here. We'll take your calls on that IHOP hotline, as we mentioned, 869-1240. It is. Did you catch any College World Series last night? I did not. I was at a swim meet, but it was. I didn't miss much. 18-4. It's right, 18-4. So you had, what, a 20-run win in game 2, and then 18-4. That kind of sucks for college baseball. You get to this thing that everybody loves and gets ready for and gets excited about, and all of these things, and then we get a big old fat dud.
Yeah, how in the world does LSU lose 24-4 in game 2 and then come back and win 18-4 in game 3? I mean, it just kind of shows you, I guess, how college baseball operates. But you had a couple of big blowouts, in the series. And I don't know, does this tell you that the SEC is, clearly the dominant conference in college baseball? I mean, I think we all kind of had that thought, that they're there and they are one of the best conferences. But I wonder with this championship, if you can definitively say now that the SEC is the best conference in college baseball.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could say that earlier. I think, and I wonder too, like their stranglehold to me seems so simple, and it is a good and interesting thing because it does sort of tie in with Brian Green and the job he has to do here. But I think that the simplest thing is, honestly, they get the benefit of good weather, right? Like it's just warmer earlier. And if I'm a great young baseball player and the decision has to be made, the ability to be able to, start off the season when it's not potentially freezing or windy or like that matters when I'm trying to get
Yeah.
myself to the big leagues.
I mean, the fact that you've got both teams in the College World Series are both from the same conference. They're both in the SEC. And then you look at, the 4 most recent national champions. You've got LSU this year, Mississippi State, and Vanderbilt, right? Like, so you've got, I mean, it's basically all SEC, and it has been, for the last several years. So, I think that there's that stranglehold, with that conference and with the prowess overall of the conference in college baseball. I don't disagree with you. I think weather probably does play a factor in all of that. Recruiting is obviously going to be, big down there. And the fact that you've got players that are, able to then develop in those SEC programs and a lot of times go to the big leagues, that tells you something too. I'm not saying the other conferences don't have that, but it seems to be incredibly prominent in the SEC. And I think it definitely shows that not only programs like Wichita State, which have been historically great, but other programs in other conferences, they're basically looking up at the way that the SEC is now operating in college baseball.
Yeah, I don't know what you do. I think you just have to power through it. And you really have to make sure within your region you're hitting home runs in recruiting because that's you get people to stay close to home, and then you got to go find them, right? And I think it's a challenge for everybody. It's not just and it's obviously a challenge that's always faced or this climate here, and we know this program has been wildly successful in it. But yeah, college and all SEC College World Series. And it's been that way for a long time, right? Like we know the SEC's been great at college baseball for as long as I can remember, right? And that's fine. Like I think it's just a product of location as much as anything. In football, it might be a little different, right? Like we know in football have been advantages, right? But in baseball, I do think it honestly just has a lot to do with weather. All right, let's get to that IHOP hotline, 869-1240. Scott on the line. Scott, what's up? Welcome into Sports Daily.
Good morning, guys. I've been, everybody's been following what's happening in Major League Baseball with the Oakland situation. And Kansas City's wanting a new downtown stadium, too. And if you notice, these are 2 teams with the lowest payroll in baseball and basically with the worst records in baseball, correct?
The Royals, I'm going to check this real quick, but I'm fairly certain the Royals do not have the second lowest. No, they don't. Not even close. They've got the 23rd ranked payroll in baseball.
Okay. Here's a proposal. If I'm a leader in the Kansas City community, after what we saw in Oakland, before they agree to a new stadium, part of the caveat is they maintain at least within 5% of the median salary in the league, or the financing reverts back to the team. Because we just saw what happened with the A's. If the owners aren't going to invest, watch the community.
Yeah, no, I think your point is good, Scott. I don't know if that solution is tangible, but I'm with you, and we've talked about it. It's sort of a chicken and the egg. The Royals have shown even in recent history that they're fine getting into. Let's just go back and look. Let's say at their 2015 payroll. Well, I can't do that. I'll find it, but they were spending when they were winning, right? Like they were able to do it. They committed to it. They were right at the league average, basically. Yeah, I'm looking at it right near the middle of the league in 2015. So that's the thing. They will spend, I think, if they're winning, but they have to spend to win. And then in 2016, so after they won the World Series, their payroll really ballooned, and they were above league average. And that's a small market team there. The problem for the Royals is they haven't been able to win. They haven't really had anything to spend it on. And so here they sit. And look, their payroll this year is $95 million, give or take, according to SportTrack. Oakland's is 50% lower than that. Oakland is in a different stratosphere than Kansas City as far as spending. Oakland and Baltimore and Tampa and Pittsburgh are all way under what the Royals are. Now, the reality is Tampa and Baltimore especially are really good. And my guess is that those payrolls will begin to trickle up. Maybe not so much Tampa because we've seen this before, but for Baltimore, certainly their payroll is going to trickle up as they begin to pay these young players. Problem for the Royals is they haven't had smart money to spend in a while because they can't get into, Tommy, they can't really get into the big time free agency of the offseason because that's funny money if you're Kansas City. Like you're talking about one player increasing your payroll by what, 20% if you get on 30% if you get in on a big time free agent. So their problem has been they haven't developed the players to then invest in internally. So that's what's always going to drive their payroll. So your solution there to just make sure they're spending a certain amount of money, I'm not sure you can do that in baseball because then you're just stuck with a bunch of bad contracts.
Well, I do think, though, and I understand the sentiment, and I don't disagree with the sentiment that if the
I don't
Royals
either.
want a brand new downtown ballpark, then the taxpayers, if they're going to be involved in making that happen, then, I definitely feel, the reasoning, and I get the reasoning why Scott would think, and I don't disagree that there should be some kind of guarantee that the Royals are spending at a level where it makes it worth having a downtown ballpark. I mean, the last thing that you want to have happen is, you have this beautiful ballpark, right, that the taxpayers are subsidizing, and then the Royals are not spending any money in free agency. They are continuing to languish. They're not improving at all. The rebuild is not happening. Attendance starts to decline. And then who knows, at that point, there could be conversations about moving the franchise. And, the one difference, though, between the Oakland situation and the Kansas City situation is that at least so far in the tenure of John Sherman as the owner of the Royals, he's been fairly vocal with his desire to invest in the community, right? Like not necessarily investing on the team and in the clubhouse, but at least investing in the community and building a new ballpark. He could have very easily, and I'm not saying that he would ever do this, I don't know, but he could have very easily bought the team and said, all right, we are going to start talking about relocating. He hasn't done that as of this point, and I don't think we ever want to, have that happen. So it's kind of, we talked about it yesterday a little bit. It's kind of which came first, the chicken or the egg. Do you build the stadium and hope that the players come and that the team gets better first, or do you try to rebuild the team first and then go from there?
A situation, the guys in Atlanta built basically have to finance that new stadium they got. Even after having one for just 5-10 years.
You were breaking up there, Scott. I missed the question, I think. But look,
I looked at the way the Atlanta management invested in that new stadium that they've got down there after being in their new stadium for 10 years, 15 years.
Yeah, it's less than that. It's like 5 or 6. I think they moved in like 2017, but still, I mean, the fact that they've done it the right way. And I think that it's important. And, Jacob, you and I discussed this yesterday about kind of looking at Atlanta. I know I'm biased because I'm a Braves fan, but looking at Atlanta and the way they built that farm system, the way they built a new stadium, all of that, you can kind of look at that as the beacon of light, right? As kind of the shining star, the city on a hill, for the Royals to try to emulate. It's going to be difficult. They're a long ways away from that. And it's not an easy process. They've got a lot of work to do. But, if they want a new stadium and they want to develop a farm system and they want to win on the field, the thing about it is that right now they're doing none of that. They're not getting a new ballpark. They don't have a farm system and they're not winning right now anyway. So there's a long way to go. It makes it really difficult to find a light at the end of the tunnel. And I simply don't know. I don't know exactly what the path is to get them back to relevance.
Well,
That is
it's
right.
developing good young players. Scott, we appreciate the call. I think that's the problem, Tommy. Like, and you can almost make a case that spending a lot in the wrong places sets you back too, because then you can't, you get stuck with contracts. You can't trade players. Baseball's problem is the market for the best players is so dadgum high that small market teams, and it's not because of geography, it's because of economics, will never have a chance at those players. The only path to great players for small market teams is to either trade a ton of assets to get them for a very short period of time or develop them and have them probably just early in their careers. It's tough. It's always the economics of baseball are strange, and I don't know what the solution is. I don't know how you fix that problem because you'll never. I mean, I know how you fix that problem. You put in a salary cap, but the players that nobody wants a salary cap. Players don't want it. Teams don't want it. So I don't know what you do. But the reality is, for them to get competitive again, you've got to look at the small market teams, the small payroll teams that are doing well right now, and they all have the same thing in common. They've developed good young players, right? That's supposed to be what happens in baseball. You're good. You have to tear it down to some degree. You retool because you've been bad and have opportunities to draft players. Then you get good again and you start this cycle over again. Well, the problem for the Royals is they missed the cycle. It's like they skipped one, right? So they were really good. They had to break it back down. They didn't break it down soon enough. They spent money not to do that. It didn't work. And they haven't drafted well. They were gifted Bobby Witt Jr. And outside of that, early in a draft, who's their next best pick that they've made early in a draft?
Daniel Lynch maybe is the only other one I can think of. Maybe.
And this is the problem, right? So now, and again, and it's not necessarily like I'm not trying to blame John Sherman for that. But if you're trying, I don't know what you can do to get a new stadium downtown when there is no path that I can see right now to success in the next. And I have been bullish and hopeful on the Royals in the past, and like I can't be now. So what is the path to winning for Kansas City that doesn't take at least 3 years? 2 if you're absolutely lucky? I don't know what it is. It's going to have to be some of the most creative free agencies and trade deadlines and dynamite evaluations that we've ever seen. And I just don't know that. I don't know how much faith you can have in that at this point. Like Piccolo's there, but Piccolo is, well, this is a big, deadline for him. Like, what can you get for the assets that you have right now to try and make this a 1-year process and not a 3 or 4-year process? Because we're just not seeing any development outside of Bobby Witt Jr. out of the early draft capital picks that Kansas City's brought in there. And Tommy, the saddest thing about that is they drafted with the intent of quick development and high floor players.
Right.
And that the opposite has happened.
Yeah, I mean, it has. And I think that, again, we can bemoan the lack of the development and the farm system, and I think that's all fair. The criticisms are fair. That's a huge reason why Dayton Moore is no longer the general manager of the Kansas City Royals. That's a major reason why. Even though he was the architect of the World Series run, he also is the architect of he's the reason why, or a major reason why, the Royals are in this place right now. And that we all know that. That's very well documented. I am really struggling with trying to find a way out of this for the Royals. And I don't think, and that's the thing about it, right? Is that there's probably not a silver bullet. It's not like they can go take a major swing. They would never do this. So before I say this, like, let's just make it clear this is not happening. But they could go and make a massive swing on a talent like Shohei Ohtani in the offseason, right? They're never going to do it, but they could. John Sherman could try to find the money to make that happen. And that's not going to be a singular fix to fix this franchise and make it better. Like there's a lot of things that have to happen. It's not just one or two superstars coming in and trying to turn things around. It starts at the foundational level, and it's going to take a lot of work and a long time for them to pull themselves out of this.
I don't know what the path is, and I don't think the issue is they haven't spent money. Like, that's the weird thing here. Like, I don't think that's anywhere close to the issue for this team. I don't think, because you can't, like, they're never going to be able to afford top end free agents. So what are they supposed to do? I mean, at some point, I think the short answer might be to go spend money on 2 to 3 middle of the road free agent starting pitchers on hopefully short deals, and you hope you get lucky. But I don't know. And the Royals, we can continue these discussions as we make our way through, because we are getting to a critical point, I think, in this season to do that. But we can continue this conversation after the break. So real quick, though, Jad, things are escalating quickly. People are sending me videos of some wacky stuff going on in the sky. We've got warnings out there for the weather, Jad. What is the latest? What's happening?
Well, just before the show started this morning, we had a severe thunderstorm warning pop up, and it was mostly for the area north of the city of Wichita, basically just to the north. Anything from about the city limits on north had that warning. And it didn't look to be, too close to the Wichita area or too bad out there, but it just keeps building towards the city. Now, the actual portion of the storm is right there at that north edge, and they've actually expanded the warning area, and that's going to include the entire city of Wichita and out into Butler County, into Andover and Augusta, as well as Rose Hill, Hayesville, Derby, Mulvane. All of these areas are now under this severe thunderstorm warning. And as this storm just kind of continues to make its way down southwards and to the east, and it's getting ready to cross into the city limits here, the Wichita area. So we're actually going to start seeing it here in a little bit. Now, another quick update. Looks like they've allowed the previous warning area, the one that included North Wichita and quite a bit of Reno County, as well as some parts of Harvey County. They've allowed some of that to expire. So it looks like it's just the edge of this storm that's really creating the problem. Once you get into the storm itself, it's actually not so bad. But yeah, right there on the edge of it, that's just now hitting the Wichita area, it looks to be pretty rough.
I'm about to tweet this. My wife is over at the HTO on 21st and 127th, and I'll tweet this and take a look during the break. There's like a big hole in the sky, it looks like, for these clouds. It is weird stuff. So let's take a quick break. Jad's going to get caught up on the weather and the latest too, and we will keep you apprised of that here. Go AM radio. It's a great reason why, right?
Yep.
So Jad will get us that. We'll have that. We're going to talk more about the Royals when we return later in the show. We'll get into NFL teams. Who has a chance to win this thing in reality? Like, who has an outside chance even? We'll talk about it. It's Sports Daily. IHOP hotline is open, 869-1240. It's Albracht and Castor. We'll be right back. Odyssey and KEYN bring you Concerts in the Park, sponsored by IHOP. Free live music Friday from 8 to 10 in Andover Central Park at the Capitol Federal Amphitheater, 1607 East Central in Andover there. This Friday's Annie Up. Bring your lawn chairs, blankets, extra cash for the food trucks. No coolers allowed. The gates will open up at 6:30. So check that out. All right. So this has been just a wacky, 20 minutes or so for the weather. So Jad has another update for us. You can find a video my wife just sent me of like a hole in the sky. But Jad, what's the latest here?
Well, just checking with the folks at the National Weather Service out there, and what they're saying now is that the biggest area of concern right now is kind of moved into Butler County, and that outflow from the storm that's actually kind of ahead of the storm itself, where the big wind gusts were actually prompting this particular storm warning. That's going to be all in Butler County, and they're saying that the wind gusts there in Butler County just aren't as strong as they were across the Sedgwick County area. And so at least one of the National Weather Service meteorologists is now saying that this may prompt the warning to be expired early. It's going to expire in about 11 minutes or so, but they might jump it down early. So it looks like this thing's kind of fizzling out almost as quickly as it kicked up.
Okay. Well, there we go. That one has been an interesting development this morning. Thank you, Jad. Jad will keep us up to date on any other developments along with that.
Will do.
All right, Tommy, let's continue this Royals talk because it got us rolling just a little bit. So here's the other interesting thing about the salary. Like, I don't blame that at all. Like, that hasn't been a thing for me. As far as like this struggle, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, if the Royals would just spend more, right? Like, maybe they could be a bigger player for some, but it wouldn't have mattered. Like, we know now that nothing they would have done individually in bringing in a player in the offseason, like nothing would have changed this. So I don't have an issue with, and again, they're nowhere near the bottom of the league in payroll, by the way, but I don't have an issue as much with like spending because I want them to spend, but spend when it's smart to spend, right? Spending when it's making sure Bobby Witt Jr. doesn't go anywhere. Or if you have, that's the problem. They don't really have any young players to spend it on. And they've shown us in recent history, if they do, they will. They just don't have it right now.
Here's my issue with that's where things stand for the Royals right now is that, I mean, it's like a 10-step process, right? To get from where they are now to where they want to be. And 10 may even be conservative. But for the sake of this argument, let's say it's a 10-step process. It's not a 1-step process or a 2-step process. There's a lot that they have to do. And there are multiple facets in the organization that need significant improvement. And, everybody was told that the coaching changes this past offseason, that was going to be the start of the rebuild, right? Or at least like this version of the rebuild. No more Dayton Moore, no more Mike Matheny, no more Cal Eldred, bringing in Matt Quattrero, bringing in, some other fresh coaching voices in the clubhouse. So that was supposed to be one of the early steps. That hasn't worked. So now you got to look at, all right, well, do they need to do that step over again? And then how do they build the farm system? And that's not an overnight fix. That's a multi-year fix, and that is a combination of drafting well, trying to get proper draft picks, developing those draft picks. I think we talked about it a couple of weeks ago, and it was shocking. I didn't even realize this, that the Royals have 0 top 100 players in their farm system. 0, none. They don't have a single one. And so, this is a long process for rebuilding the farm system, developing the young players. And so I think it would be really easy for us to say, yeah, all they got to do is just go out and get a couple of free agents. No, it runs much, much deeper than that. It's a multi-step process, and it's not an overnight thing. And so I think what makes us so discouraging is that I think we both see them at the very, very beginning of this process, and we don't exactly know how many steps it is and how successful they're going to be in it.
Yeah, I mean, that's That's where it is. And that's to me the most frustrating thing about it too, right? This should be the point where it's like, okay, let's open up the purse and go. And maybe John Sherman thought that was going to be the timeline. The timing is unfortunate for Sherman. I mean, there's no, and we're, in a new downtown ballpark and all that. I don't know. Like, I try to come up with these optimistic timelines, and I had them 2 years ago because I was sort of banking on the development of some of these players. It's just not there. So, I think you continue and I hear people say, oh, you just got to blow it all up. Just blow it all up. There's nothing to blow up. Like, what are you going to blow
It's
up?
already been blown up. Yeah.
The only thing is the debate only becomes whether you keep Bobby Witt Jr. like that. I suppose if there was a world where somebody offered you the moon for Bobby Witt Jr., you could think about it, but that doesn't make any sense either. Like, you got to build around something. And so I don't know what the answer is. Get lucky. I mean, honestly, that's it, right? Get lucky. Get lucky that you get a few players developed that you can try to build around, and you can, piece this thing together somewhat through free agency. But the reality of baseball has been in recent years, you have to tear it down, and it'll take 2 or 3 years, and you got to you got to build it back up. We're in what year are we in now? Year 5, 6 of this rebuild?
Do you think there is an argument to be made where the Royals could go out and maybe try to make a splash in free agency this offseason? Like, I know they typically don't spend a lot of money, but maybe be in the conversations to try to get some of the more top tier free agents on the market? Or is that basically cutting off their nose to spite their face?
No, let me just pull up what the free agents cost. The top end, no. No, because it's too high. Like, it's way, way too high. I mean, you're talking if their salary, if their payroll right now is $95 million, okay, like per season, Aaron Judge just signed for half of that, right? So he'd be taking up a third of your payroll. Trey Turner took $27 million a year, still probably too high. DeGrom as a pitcher signed for $37 million a year. Like, I don't know. And Verlander signed for 43. So now I'm putting them in order. Correa 33, Turner 27, Rodon 27. I mean, you go down the list. Anthony Rizzo cost $20 million a year. That's 20% essentially of your payroll if you go there. Now, if you go further down the list, so then what are we talking about? Nathan Eovaldi for the Rangers, who's been fantastic, signed for $17 million. That feels like the ceiling of a free agency. Andrew Benintendi, former Royal, right? $15 million. That's probably the range that they could get in, but you're talking about, guys at that point have to be cornerstone pieces of your franchise. In a perfect world, you've spent on all your young players, and those are players that sort of put you over the edge, right?
So
but they're just not in that market.
And looking at upcoming potential free agents this offseason, it's very, very pitcher heavy. And so outside of Shohei Ohtani, I mean, you're looking at Julio Urias from the Dodgers, Max Scherzer from the Mets, Aaron Nola from the Phillies. Who else is on there? Luis Severino from the Yankees, Blake Snell from the Padres, Clayton Kershaw from the Dodgers. There's a lot of pitchers that are on this list where, they're all, you would think, probably going to garner. I mean, they're all going to garner a lot of interest, but garner a lot more money than what the Royals are probably willing to spend. That being said, there might be one of those guys that, you mentioned that cornerstone could be a cornerstone for them. I don't think any of them at all, when push comes to shove, will end up with Kansas City. But I don't know. I don't know if you have to try to accomplish both things at the same time, like develop your young players and open up the checkbook to get some more premier free agents, or exactly what that process is.
So I do think this year, this coming off season, one of the challenges of free agency won't exist, and that's that you don't want to block young players, right? That challenge is out the window because there's no young players to block
nobody
anymore.
To block. Yep.
Right. So let's let's assume next year, you've got, Bobby Witt Jr. and Pascantino, maybe Prado and Michael Garcia, is the guys you're building around. Okay, so you got a lot of room there. And in the pitching staff, you basically have nobody, right? Like,
yep.
You've pretty much got zero there. So could you go get three? Could you go spend $45 million on 3 starting pitchers just to sort of be competitive? Maybe.
Yeah, I think you could.
Is that better than sucking and having a higher draft pick? Although I will say, I believe that they don't have a chance to be at the very top of the draft. So yeah, maybe next year is the year when they don't have that opportunity anyway because of the new lottery type system. Yeah, I mean, I think because then at that point, I mean, and it would be nothing other than an olive branch from John Sherman to the fan base if you do that. Like, guys, I promise, like, we are committed to winning. We're just, in the bad part of this. Like, this should have nothing to do with putting a ballpark downtown. We are going to commit to it. So I don't know. I don't challenge that aspect of things for the Royals, like the A's or some of these other teams. Like, I don't fault that as the reason for their failure. The reason for their failure is because they can't develop any players. That's the reason. They haven't drafted well. They haven't developed well. And it has just created this cycle now that feels like it's got to start all over. That's the issue. And I don't think anything but time is going to correct that. 869-1240. That's
By the way,
number.
really quickly, the Royals just announced that John Sherman will meet with the media on Thursday morning. So doing a press conference. That doesn't happen very often. So he's meeting with the media. I'm guessing to talk about the new stadium potential. I'm not sure, but they just announced that 1 minute ago.
Well, that's interesting. Could that be something bigger? On June 27th? Huh. Well, we'll keep an eye on that. We'll come back. We'll do a little giveaway. We'll get you ready. Hour number 2, we're going to talk some football. Who's got a chance to win a Super Bowl? How many teams are there? Like, really? Not just maybe, but like really have a chance. 869-1240 is the IHOP hotline. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Sports Daily with Jacob and Tommy. Still to come, Jim Rome at 11, right here on KFH.
Dude, you gotta hear this.
Go ahead. I think I want to hear this.
Sports Daily is on KFH.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Sports Daily here. Let's give something away here in our final segment of the first hour. Let's do some HTO tea and coffee. We'll get you a free iced tea card, a free brew house card, which is all the coffee drinks, iced, hot, whatever you want. Jad will get that. Let's do our second caller here, 869-1240, HTO in Wichita, East or West. You can get your hands on that. The coffee only good East. Jad will get us a winner. I see this. So, Tommy, down here, I will have sometimes, especially this time of year, just because I want to see sort of what the national conversations are right now. I've got ESPN on a TV in here. And for like 4 straight days, I see this story. One, they're going nuts for the Jets, right? The Jets. This doesn't surprise. It's a New York team, right? Aaron Rodgers is there. But I keep seeing Dalvin Cook to the Jets. Should the Jets sign Dalvin Cook? What about? And I'm like, stop it. Breece Hall. We're all Breece Hall around here. I'm a Dalvin Cook fan. We've talked about the conversations where he can help teams. That's all fine and dandy. Don't go to the Jets. That's Breece Hall's team. Leave him alone. Get Dalvin Cook out of there. Can we stop this madness, please?
I'm not so sure that that's even really an upgrade for the Jets because of how good Breece Hall was his rookie year before he got hurt.
I think it's a safety for Breece Hall is what it would be.
I think so too, but I also think that it's also, I mean, as far as a talent upgrade,
it's not. No.
I'd rather have Breece Hall on my team than Dalvin Cook.
100%. I think anybody would. I think the reason they keep connecting those dots is Breece Hall's coming off a very serious injury that sometimes takes a little more than a year to come back from.
Sure.
So if there's any delay in that, and all the reports have been good that I've seen on Breece Hall's recovery. Of course, Breece Hall played at Northwest, played at Iowa State, local kid, not kid anymore. But yeah, I think it would be more of a safety net. Like, could Dalvin Cook help them and ease Breece Hall back? It does make some sense. I want to see all Breece Hall. You know, I want to see Breece Hall carry the ball 25 times a game and be a monster this year.
I mean, if you're the Jets, though, and you want to try to have a little bit of a safety valve because you're not sure how well Breece Hall will come back, wouldn't you one of those spend less money and go get maybe like a Zeke Elliott or somebody rather than a Dalvin Cook? Like somebody that you can lean on a little bit as opposed to investing the money that Dalvin Cook is going to garner.
I think in 1-year deals, the Jets should have no interest in doing anything but pushing all their chips into the middle of the table. So, like, whatever that means, when you brought Rodgers in there, when you were willing to make Nathaniel Hackett your offensive coordinator after the abysmal year he just had in Denver, everything they're doing needs to be about the next 1 to 2 years. Like, everything. They've got the great young core. They've made their move with Rodgers. They've got some receivers there. They've got a line. They've got they got it all. So you don't, I'm not sure if I could say the term on the radio that I was going to say. You can't go halfway. You can't, you can't halfway do it. You have to go and push it all into the middle. So if you can afford Dalvin Cook versus Zeke Elliott to this point in their careers, I mean, Dalvin Cook's probably got a little more gas in the tank, is certainly a little bit more versatile at this point. Go that way. I would consider that if I'm the Jets, I'd be thinking more about DeAndre Hopkins than I would be about Dalvin Cook. They give me another red zone target.
They've got such a good wide receiver crew, though, right now.
Agree.
Like, I don't know why you'd want to invest.
Only because he gives you something that the one thing, no matter how much he has left, which we don't know, right? The one thing he does have and always will have is that get him ball in the end zone, right? Which Aaron Rodgers loves to throw that ball. And Hopkins has been as good at that, just that one little individual thing as anybody. I'm just saying, like, what would put them over the edge potentially? I don't think Dalvin Cook's going to put them over the edge. I think Dalvin Cook would simply be a safety net. Like, he's just there for safety's sake. But if you bring him in there, you've got to give him touches, right? And if that inhibits Breece Hall, that's a tricky one. It makes sense. We're being selfish here when we say we don't want that to happen, but it does make sense. I understand why those rumors are happening. Let's get into the NFL a little bit. We'll just look across the league. Who's got a chance, a legitimate chance, just any chance at all to win a Super Bowl? I like to do this. Like, how many teams can we count out on June 27th? We'll do that next. The Sports Daily rolls into hour number 2. It's Albracht and Castor here with you on KFH.
Tommy Castor. This is Sports Daily on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
Town got another apartment. Spent on my rent, girl, you know All right, welcome back, everybody. Hour number 2. Glad to be with you today here on Sports Daily. Always a lot of fun. We are at an interesting point in the season, in the year, to get things going. Let's talk a little football, Tommy. NFL, we're on the, we're coming up on training camp season, all of these things. We're through the draft. We're through mini camps. Let's take a little stock report here on where we think things may fall. Where do we think things may fall, Tommy? What about who's got a chance to win a Super Bowl here? We know that Kansas City and Cincinnati and Buffalo and Philadelphia and San Francisco, I think, would be at the top of the list, right? Am I missing any obvious choices? I think those would be the 5 that most people would put right at the top of their lists of teams who could win a Super Bowl this year. Is that a fair top 5?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that you could make an argument for maybe 1 or 2 other teams to potentially jump in there, but I'm fairly comfortable with those 5.
Okay, so then let's expand it. And I think there are, a more generally thought of next group. I think Baltimore would be in that group. I think the Chargers would be in that group. Maybe people are still willing to put Dallas in that group. That's probably it, right? Miami, perhaps, if everything goes well for them health-wise. It's not a massive.
I would put Miami in that group. I'd put Jacksonville in that group too. I think that we're going to see them take another step forward this season too.
I suppose they're sort of on that next line for me, but you could make a case. I'd be fine with putting Jacksonville in, and I think most people would. So those are the teams that seem like. And I purposefully don't have Minnesota in there yet. And they're not even the favorite to win their division. Detroit is. That's why. So then let's expand it. Now we've gotten through the teams I think most people would agree on, right? So the question becomes, who else is there, right? Who else is left on teams that aren't as obvious? You know who we forgot about? The Jets. The Jets would obviously be in there too, I think, with Aaron Rodgers. I think most people would give them a legitimate chance. So now we're left with a group that includes New England, and I'm just looking at last year's standard. This is no particular order. New England, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Tennessee, Indianapolis, Houston, Denver, Vegas, Giants, Commanders, Minnesota, Detroit, Green Bay, Chicago, Tampa, Carolina, New Orleans, Atlanta, Seattle, Rams, Cardinals. Okay, so that's the remainder. How many of those teams do we think might actually have a legitimate chance at a Super Bowl?
Oh man, maybe like one or two of them. I think you're going to see a step up from a couple of those teams. Like I would be shocked if the Rams finish 5-12 again. I mean, with Sean McVay and all of that.
Well, let's I mean, Matt Stafford, we have to assume now will be healthy, right?
You would think, yeah. I just have a hard time believing that with the way that entire team is built. I mean, I think last year was an anomaly for them to finish 5-12. I don't think they'll finish 5-12 again. Does that mean I think they've got a chance to win a Super Bowl? No, I don't think so.
See, I do think they do. I would say yes to the Rams, because if Stafford comes back healthy and they get Cooper Kupp back, I still do think they have enough talent around that you could make a case in a winnable conference. I think what we're gonna see is more teams in the NFC on our list here than we will the AFC. But I would give the Rams a puncher's chance, I think.
I have a hard time with that because while I do think that they will be improved from last season and probably finish with a winning record, I think that they can absolutely compete for a wild card spot. I'm not sure that their current makeup, I would feel confident about them returning to the Super Bowl. Of course, they're, the champions from 2 years ago, and we know that Matt Stafford can get it done. I don't know. I think I'm not ready to say that I think that they can compete for that, but I do think they'll be improved.
Okay. Seattle is a great story last year. I don't think anybody's given them a chance, are they? I'm not. Arizona,
I think they're a playoff team. I think they
not.
can be a playoff team, but I'm not sure that.
But win a Super Bowl.
Far.
Yeah, no, win a Super Bowl is this conversation. I think anybody can be a playoff team in the NFL from year to year, but win a Super Bowl. Sorry, no, Seattle. It was a great story last year. Arizona, absolutely not. Let's go to the NFC South, which is wide open. Any of those teams, or which of those teams you think could sneak through? I suppose New Orleans has to
probably
be the
New
one
Orleans. That's going to be that's going to be my thought.
But I do think the upside for them in an NFC could be that high. I mean, you're banking on literally everything going right? Like it's not likely. Carolina, you would have to have like Justin Herbert type rookie year out of Bryce Young. I don't think that's in the tank, so I can't do it. Although I think some of the rest of their roster is good. Same with Tampa. Like you would bank it on Baker Mayfield on a decent roster. I don't think you can do that. And Atlanta is one of the more wide open, interesting teams to me in football this year. But no, not with Desmond Ridder at quarterback. And anybody missing anything in the South?
No, I think it's got to be probably New Orleans gets the nod to be the team that will represent the division in the playoffs. But I think that any of those teams making the playoffs, you're probably going to have an early playoff exit.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go. Let's see. Let's go now to the North, because the North is the most interesting to me. Minnesota, Detroit, Green Bay, Chicago. Green Bay and Chicago are no's. Detroit and Minnesota, though. This is interesting. This got brought up on the national show this weekend because I was talking to Reggie Wilson, who people might remember from here a long time ago. He's now in Minneapolis. And I kind of asked him, like, am I crazy? Detroit's the favorite to win the division, but I'm taking Minnesota still, like 10 times out of 10. Is Detroit going to make up 4 games on Minnesota this year? I don't think that they are.
I don't see it. And I've always been bullish on Minnesota. I mean, going back to last year, And they've got flaws. There's no doubt about it. And, I think one of their biggest flaws is, just their over reliance on Kirk Cousins. And I think that there's this thought that he's going to be the quarterback that's going to win them a championship. And I just don't think that's going to happen. That being said, if we're only looking at the division, I don't see Detroit being able to make up that ground. I think it's a fairly easy pick for me to say that Minnesota is going to repeat.
Yeah, I don't. But then okay, so the question becomes: are either of those teams capable of winning a
No.
Super Bowl?
Nope.
Of winning a Super Bowl. I think Minnesota can't. I think Minnesota is, because I think they can get there, and anytime you can get there, you got a chance. I mean, we've seen Jared Goff take a team to a Super Bowl. I'm trying to think of Detroit. Detroit's defense was so dadgum bad last year. Like, is their defense going to take that much of a step? They're going to be an interesting litmus test this year because they're going to run the crap out of the ball. They lost Jamison Williams and the gambling thing for like 6 weeks. I don't think in a perfect world I could see it. No. Minnesota in a perfect world I could see it, right? Because they get Flores in there as a defensive coordinator. I think that can make enough of it. And they're philosophically, remember they drafted Jordan Addison. So now we know, and they're not retaining Dalvin Cook. They're going to sling the ball this year. Kirk Cousins is capable of that, right? Like if you said Kirk Cousins is going to throw it 50 times a year, like 50 times a game. Okay. Like, all right. I know his deficiencies too, but in that kind of offense, when, they've gone out and they've added some pieces and they made their big tight end move and trade last year, and they've got Justin Jefferson and they drafted Jordan Addison. I think in a world where Jordan Addison has the kind of rookie impact we've seen from some receivers in recent years, and Flores gets the best out of their defense. Yeah. Okay. I could see it for Minnesota. I'm going to give them a puncher's chance in the NFC because I think it's a winnable conference. Okay. So Philadelphia and Dallas we have as probablys. I didn't put the Giants in there, Tommy, because I think last year was like a best case scenario for the Giants. I don't think so. And I don't think so with Washington either.
Yeah, I think that the Giants were a really nice story last year. And I don't think that they're a bad team. I just think that their ceiling, they probably reached it already. And so with the current makeup of that team, I like Brian Dable and I like the culture that he brought to that franchise last season. I think Daniel Jones will only get you so far. And I think that you can ride on the back of Saquon Barkley, assuming that he's healthy this season and is able to play the entire year. They finished over 500, but I think that that's about the ceiling with the way that team is made up.
Yeah, no, I'm out on them. All right, let's go to the AFC. Jacksonville, I wanted to talk about. So let's hit on that because you have them in. I think I do too. Calvin Ridley's effect there is good. They're in a winnable division. And if Trevor Lawrence takes the next step as a quarterback, yeah, look, Jacksonville could make the same kind of jump Cincinnati made a couple of years ago. I don't think that's out of the question at all. Trevor Lawrence had for a number one pick, I feel like he's had low expectations his first couple of years in the NFL. He's got the load is much larger for Trevor Lawrence this year because now everybody does have expectations for the Jaguars, don't you think? Like now everybody this is an interesting year for Trevor Lawrence.
Well, think about how terrible the Jaguars were with Urban Meyer and just the night and day difference, and not just the team as a whole, but even Trevor Lawrence and his development going from Urban Meyer to now Doug Peterson. They go from what were they like 2-15 2 years ago, and they finished with a winning record last year. So you would think that progression should continue. So 9-8 this last year, I think they can win 10 plus games in a division that is not good. I think that they would be the team that I would pick to repeat as the AFC South division champion. Because I mean, Tennessee, you've moved away from Derrick Henry and you're riding on Ryan Tannehill. Indianapolis, you've got a rookie quarterback in Anthony Richardson. And the Texans, who knows what's going to happen with CJ Stroud. And they're stacking up, they're rebuilding, but I think it's the Jaguars division to lose. I think they can win 10 plus games this season. And, I would love to see, and I think it will happen, that development of Trevor Lawrence continuing year 2 in the Doug Peterson system.
Okay, so let's talk about Indianapolis because they're probably one that interests me more than the general public. I do think their roster is still pretty good. I think last year went totally haywire on them. And I just wonder with, Jonathan Taylor gets back healthy. If Anthony Richardson gives us his best year possible, and it's not, I don't think it's going to be it's not going to be as a passer, but if it's just as like a playmaker, because we know they could win that division, right? I think that it's totally within the realm that Richardson plays well. They have a new coaching staff in place. Things go well. They win the division. That's not crazy. What becomes the question to me is if that happens, could they be and could he be so unique that they could, and let's be real, like if they do it, it's going to be like Jonathan Taylor's good. They have some decent receivers there, and they've had at times a decent defense. Could they be like a total wild card, dark horse? Maybe they're one of the more interesting teams for this conversation for me.
Yeah, no,
I don't think so.
I don't think so. I don't think so because we have no idea how Anthony Richardson is going to translate.
No, I know
to the
that,
NFL,
but what I'm
right?
saying is what if Richardson is great? Like, what if he's so uniquely talented that he gives defenses fits in this first year? What if that happens? Because I know that's not likely or anything, but if it does, is that enough? I guess becomes the question.
I don't think so. I mean, yeah, they've got Jonathan Taylor, but think about in years past when they've had, guys like Phillip Rivers and Carson Wentz. They still had Jonathan Taylor, and they were bad. So I think that Taylor is a nice piece. I mean, obviously he's been one of the best running backs in the NFL over the last couple of years, but he's been a really good running back on a really bad team. I have a hard time thinking that even if Anthony Richardson comes in and is great, that's going to be enough to get them over the hump and make them a contender. Again, that division is pretty weak. So I think really your only competition is Jacksonville.
Totally.
But I'm not willing yet to say I think that they'll be there.
Okay. I'm out on them too. Like, I mean, the reality is we can say no. Cincinnati and Baltimore, yes and yes. Here's this AFC North is pretty interesting because let's skip them for a second and go to the East. New England, no chance, right? 0 to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go then to the AFC North. Pittsburgh and Cleveland are pretty dadgum interesting. If Kenny Pickett develops, there's a lot of buzz around Kenny Pickett right now. So if Kenny Pickett develops and Tomlin's there, I think you always got to give Pittsburgh an outside chance, don't you? I mean, it's all on Pickett, but they've got some talented players in Pittsburgh. So I suppose yes on one, kind of like New Orleans, like maybe the lowest possible, but just slightly 1% kind of possible. And then Cleveland. Look, Cleveland keeps adding all this talent everywhere on the roster. It all just sort of becomes about Deshaun Watson. And I think now is the year we get the real evaluation of Deshaun Watson. But because the possibility has to exist that he returns to his Houston days, I think you have to give him a chance. I don't like it very much.
Not going to work.
I don't think it's going to work either. But okay, so let me just – but if Deshaun Watson returned to the level he was at in Houston, they'd have a chance, right? Like in that scenario. So if you're saying a player just needs to be what a player has been before, I think for that reason, you got to say, okay, fine. I suppose it's possible.
I don't know.
They've added a lot of talent to that roster. Okay.
I think we're all going to look back. I don't know how long from now,
I agree.
Maybe a year, maybe 5 years.
I agree with what you're about to
look
say.
back and say that was a monumentally stupid decision.
One of the
pay
worst we've ever
Deshaun Watson
seen. I agree.
That kind of money with his baggage, with his history, and just the fact that he didn't play the game for so long. I mean, I know it was a small sample size when he came back last season for the Browns, but it was abysmal. Like, it was bad. And I'm not sure that I've seen anything that would tell me that this season is going to be any better. Maybe he's put the work in during the offseason and he'll look better than he did the few games he played last year for the Browns. But I think, again, we're going to look back and we're going to say that was a terrible decision by the Browns organization to bring him in and pay him the kind of money that they're willing to pay him in guaranteed money.
I don't disagree, and I've said that from the very beginning, right? Like, I'm just trying to, if it goes well, and again, I don't think it will either. I've said that from the beginning. I thought this was a terrible decision, all of those things. But if it did, and we're not talking about a player that's never been good, like all of a sudden being good, whatever. Like, if Deshaun Watson is only what he has, if he only returns to what he was in Houston, would that be enough for Cleveland if that happened to make it through?
No, I don't think so. I mean, Nick Chubb has been effective as their running back over the last couple of years, when he's been healthy, but that's basically the only piece they have. I'm not. I mean, that's the premier piece, right? Like,
they've
that's
got
the
Amari
one
Cooper. They traded for Elijah Moore. They've got some good tight ends. They have some weapons. They have Myles Garrett, who's one of the better players. They added Zadarius Smith.
I'm talking about offensively. I'm talking about offensively.
They've got Amari Cooper and Elijah Moore.
Okay, cool. Doesn't
That's
really move the needle
wide
for me.
receiver room. And Donovan Peoples-Jones is their 3 as a deep threat. They've got a good wide receiver room, and their line's been good for years.
I just don't think that it's enough to overcome if Deshaun Watson continues to regress the way that we saw him.
That's not what I'm saying.
Season,
I'm not saying if he continues to regress. That's not what I mean. Because I don't think he's going to return either. I'm saying if he returned to his Houston level, if Deshaun Watson played at that level, would they have enough? That becomes, to me, the only way you could, because I don't think he's going to either. Yeah. But if it happened, would it, even in that scenario, would it be enough?
That division is so tough.
That conference is so tough.
Well, I know, but you've got to get through the division first. You've got to. I guess you could get in as a wild card, but man, like, you're up against Cincinnati. You're up.
So this
Baltimore.
Conversation really becomes like, so that it gets easier to make cases for teams in the NFC, but when you're talking about the AFC, it's basically, can anybody be better than Kansas City, Cleveland, or Buffalo? Right? Like, that's Cincinnati. What it comes. What did I say? Cleveland, Cincinnati.
Cleveland.
Yeah.
Yep.
Kansas City, Cincinnati, or Buffalo. And that's where it gets, like, for the AFC, and we want to put Jacksonville up there. I just don't know. Like, the Jets probably, I think, would be the only other one. I mean, maybe Jacksonville, but even that seems like a stretch. What about the Chargers? Because we're obviously not going to take the Raiders or the Broncos here. But what about the Chargers? Can the Chargers enter the chat room of this? I think you have to put them in the mix, right? Like,
I suppose you can.
Everybody, and I know you're
always
going to be a little jaded because they burned you so bad.
I'm just saying
year.
Every year, everybody picks the Chargers. Like, that's just the way that it is.
It's really good,
right? And they always perennially underperform. And I finally took the plunge last year, and I picked them to win the division. As much as I'm a Chiefs fan and love Kansas City, I was like, man, like, I'm finally going to take the bait and pick and they burn me. They burn everybody every single year. So sure, I guess they've got a puncher's chance to make it happen, but what would tell you that they're not going to choke like they've done every single year for God knows how many years?
That Justin Herbert is good. I mean, it takes the next step.
He was there last year and they choked.
I know. He's got to continue his development, and they just finally put it over the edge. But again, is it going to be enough to be better than all three of Kansas City, Cincinnati, and Buffalo in whatever order those three teams finish? Because I do think you can make it, you don't have to try that hard to make a case for any of those three teams. I'd say yes, I guess. I suppose put them in the let's put them in the NFC. Would they be the favorite?
If they were in a different conference.
Outside of Philadelphia? Sure. Philadelphia is probably a heavier favorite than I'm willing to give them credit for because I hate them as a fan. But they're probably the heaviest favorite to reach the Super Bowl. Maybe we'll look at BetMGM and see just to reach. I don't know if just to reach the Super Bowl, like to win the conference, is there yet. I'll pull that up because if I of all the favorites to win the conference, to me, I think that Philadelphia's got to be the favorite, right?
Oh, for
Don't you
sure.
think?
They've got to be. Yeah.
Because Kansas City's got to get through Cincinnati and Buffalo.
Yeah. Them, San Francisco, that's probably it in the NFC.
Right. So their path seems easier. And I'm trying to, it's to win the conference, to reach the Super Bowl, just to reach it. They feel like they've got to be the heaviest favorite to reach it because of who they would potentially have to get through. Here's the list. Okay, so I found it. I finally found it. I'm on BetMGM right now. So the Chiefs are plus 350 to win the AFC. Wouldn't you know it? The Eagles are plus 260. So they are. There's a better chance, according to Vegas right now, that the Eagles win the NFC than the Chiefs win the AFC. However, to win the Super Bowl, right, the Chiefs are better, are shorter odds, are the odds-on favorite to win the Super Bowl, slightly ahead of the Eagles, but not the conference. That's what's really interesting this year about the NFL. It's because of we sort of saw this in the NBA Finals, if you remember it, like with Boston, I think it was. Like you have a better chance to get there, but a worse chance to win it once you do. It's kind of interesting. All right, let's take a quick break. We'll come back. Chris says, what about Miami, assuming Tua stays healthy to win a Super Bowl? I ain't taking Miami over those teams we talked about. They got a chance, but no, I'm not going to pick. I don't, even if Tua's healthy, I don't think they're better than any of those teams. We'll come back. We'll continue the conversation. It's Sports Daily on a Tuesday. Albracht and Castor coming right back at you. All right, welcome back, everybody. Sports Daily on KFH. Right before Chris brought up Miami, I don't even in a perfect year, Tommy. I don't think Miami's going to have enough. I just don't see Tua as the guy that's going to lead this team through that gauntlet of those top three, and probably we need to make Baltimore a fourth with Lamar Jackson healthy. I don't think so.
Is that really just on the shoulders of Tua? I mean, or do you think they don't have the other pieces around him to make a run, or is it simply on Tua?
It's on Tua for me. I like the rest of their roster. I mean, I think the rest of their roster is talented enough. I think it's a Tua thing for me. Even if he came back healthy.
I think that he's got the upside to lead them to success if he can be healthy, right? Then that's the biggest question. Like I just don't know, and I until we know the level of health that he's playing at. I mean, I think that there was a thought at one point last season that he should probably just retire. So I'm not ready to commit to them until I know how healthy he is. If he is healthy 100% and can play at the top of his game, I don't think there's a reason why they can't compete in that division. I think that they've got the skill position players to compete with Buffalo and with the Jets. So I'm not ready to count them out yet, but I want to see how Tua is before I make that determination.
I don't think, because I'm trying to even, like, is Tua's best enough? I don't think it is. I don't think it is.
I don't think
it's good enough.
I think it is. I think with, if there was a different, like, think of the guys that he has to catch the football, right? I mean, they've got, Tyreek and Waddle and, all of that. If he just had a couple of scrub wide receivers, it'd be different. But I think the way that offense is built to complement him, sure, if he's healthy, I think they absolutely can compete.
Okay, so let's get to another comment here. Jason says, I feel like it's a make or break year for Buffalo. If they fail again with this team, I see some major changes coming to that franchise. They have the most pressure on them. Do they have the most pressure? I mean, I think Cincinnati probably has equal pressure, don't you, Tommy? I mean, Buffalo hasn't gotten to the Super Bowl yet, but I think it would be equal pressure with Cincinnati.
I don't think it's equal. I think Buffalo has more. I think Buffalo has more pressure than Cincinnati does because the Bengals are more recently at the top, right? Buffalo's been there for a couple of years longer than Cincinnati has, and Buffalo has been unable to break through. They haven't made a Super Bowl, and they've got the roster to do that, right? If it wasn't for Kansas City in the way, and now Cincinnati, before, Buffalo had really one team to try to break through in Kansas City. Now they've got Cincinnati to deal with too. So I think the pressure absolutely is more on Buffalo than it would be on basically any other team in that.
Let me rephrase it, because I hear this sentiment a lot, and we're going to take a break and get Kevin Jinks of the Wichita Sports Commission is going to join us to talk about their banquet coming up in just a few minutes. But just real quick on this, because I think this sentiment's there for Buffalo. I don't think it's quite fair. If Buffalo doesn't win a Super Bowl this year, no, I don't think they need to blow it up. Right? That's the pressure I'm talking about. Like, yeah, I think they feel the internal pressure for sure as much as anybody. But like, nobody's saying if Cincinnati can't get over that edge and win the Super Bowl this year, it's time to blow it up, right? I don't think it's time to blow it up if it doesn't work for Buffalo. I think you continue to try and tweak it as best you can to try and get over that hump. Blow it up. What is blow it up? Major changes. And he didn't, to be fair, Jason didn't say blow it up. He said major changes. I think that's a terrible idea.
They've made already some major changes to that defense. They've moved out a couple of players defensively and brought in, some other ones. I mean, the whole purpose, keep in mind, remember when they brought in Von Miller, the whole purpose of them bringing in a guy like Von Miller was to take down Kansas City. And that hasn't happened yet. So,
he got hurt. Yeah.
Right. So that hasn't happened yet. So I would imagine, I don't know about the word major, like the word major is subjective, but I do think that
major comes when they're talking about changing coaches. And I think that would be crazy.
If it doesn't work this year, though, I do think that you have to start looking at some of these other pieces outside of Josh Allen, outside of Steph Diggs, outside of some of the other cornerstone players. Because really, I mean,
but not coach. But not coach.
I'm okay with Sean McDermott. I've got no issue with them.
Think about if the Eagles would have gotten frustrated, or the Chiefs had gotten frustrated that Andy Reid couldn't. I mean, the Eagles did, and it cost them Andy Reid. What if the Chiefs would have made a change because Andy Reid couldn't get over that? No, you don't. Like, when you're reaching those points every year, that's not the time to change everything. That's still the time to try and tweak and make it happen. 869-1240. All right, we're going to bring in Kevin Jinks, Wichita Sports Commission. He's going to talk to us about the banquet they have coming up later this week. That's next on Sports Daily. All right, welcome back, everybody. It is Sports Daily. It is KFH. Thanks for joining us there or on our video streams. Albracht and Castor joined now by our buddy Kevin Jinks over at the Wichita Sports Commission. Kevin, what's up, man?
We are getting ready for our annual Greater Wichita Sports Banquet and Buster Posey Award. How are you guys today?
We're good. So, tell us about the banquet this year because, well, number one, can people still sign up to get there, or are we all filled up?
No, we actually have 2 tables left right now. And if we do, we fill those 2 tables, then we have a sellout. And so that's the first time in a while. So real quick, I'll give you some information. So the Sports Commission puts on the Greater Wichita Sports Banquet, which honors local high school, college, and professional athletes. That is one aspect of the banquet. And then another aspect of it, of course, is we are the home of the Buster Posey National Collegiate Catcher of the Year Award, and we'll have the 3 finalists coming in for that: Jack Payton from Louisville, Ryan Snell from Lamar University, and Kyle Teal from Virginia. Virginia was a College World Series team that went, unfortunately, 2-2 in Omaha, but certainly had a great season to make it up to Omaha. And so we have that award that goes out. Buster Posey will be here to present the award. And then our featured guest speaker for the night in our what we call a fireside chat or just a sit-down conversation with Mike Kennedy is K-State men's basketball coach Jerome Tang. So a really special evening honoring our local athletes that we've been doing for 25 years. Then certainly with the Buster Posey Award being a part of it. And you know, with the accolades and the success that Coach Tang had at his first year at K-State, and a lot of expectations moving forward and everything, and just I think just a really interesting figure to have. And so we're very excited about it. But yes, we do have a few more tickets. If people are interested in purchasing tickets, they can go to our website, wichitasports.com, and find the awards link or the banner, and they'll be able to buy tickets through our website.
Kevin, in all the years of the National Collegiate Catcher Award being given here in Wichita, there have been some big time names that have ended up with, you know, pretty long and successful big league careers. And so looking at the 3 finalists this year for that award, for the Buster Posey Award, what do we know about? I know you mentioned Virginia and the kid from there. What do we know about those 3 finalists?
Well, I think the guy who probably sticks out a little bit more than the others is Kyle Teal. You know, Kyle is projected to be an 8th pick overall in the draft. He hit over 400 the entire season this year as a junior. You know, he's a guy who's a lot like Buster Posey. Buster went to Florida State as a shortstop, and then they turned him into a catcher. And that's what Virginia did as well. He came in as a shortstop, kind of third base guy, and then his sophomore year. So he's only been catching, honestly, for the last 2 years. Now, he did get a lot of instruction from his dad. His dad was drafted by the Dodgers in '89 and has a facility or an academy in New Jersey, or had one. And so his dad was a catcher as well. So he probably got some tips there along the way. But a guy who's probably he's a projected one to go high. I really have enjoyed looking at Ryan Snell from Lamar, even though it's a small school and a small conference. He was the player of the year in the Southland Conference. And when you look at this past year as a junior, as a senior, he threw out 59% of base runners trying to steal on him. So from a defensive point of view, he's legit. And that's one of the things about the award, is that we look at the whole body of work rather than just offensive numbers like we possibly could. So we look at the whole body of work of how well they do defensively, how they work with pitchers, and then just certainly how they play offense too.
So, Kevin, when we look at this banquet, it's the Tang thing that sticks out to me this year, because he has become and became one of the darlings nationally of the sport of college basketball. And then, his personality became contagious. What a perfect opportunity with so many young people that you guys will have in the room to hear what I imagine is going to be a pretty interesting conversation. Don't you think? Like, that's the part of it for me that gets really interesting this year.
Yeah, and I can't say enough about Mike Kennedy. I mean, he's the ultimate professional. He does a great job of research, and I've already seen the discussion points from Mike, and I was like, oh, these are great. And as a former broadcaster, it's like, oh, he's right in line with kind of things people want to hear about, and where the conversation goes. And I think Coach Tang will have 20-25 minutes. We'll have with him, and just get a deeper feel for his approach. We have a kind of a hype video that will air, and it's basically just snippets that he was mic'd up at a practice. And one of the great lines with it, and he goes, and he's talking to his team, and he goes, if you guys want to win a Big 12 championship, you get you get a steal here, a bucket there, and a steal here. Or I'm sorry, I should say a stop here, a bucket down there, and a stop again here. And it's just a great line, and it applies to, in a very short manner, to just his approach of being very, very simple with coaching, but also getting kids to understand what he wants them to get done.
Well, every single nominee for all of these different categories in the awards, Kevin, are well-deserving and worthy nominees. But as I'm going through, I mean, there are some names that stick out as players on both the men's and the women's side that are basically superstars or superstars in the making. Avery Johnson, a nominee for the Barry Sanders High School Male Athlete of the Year award. You've got Sydney McKinney is the College Female Athlete of the Year nominee. Peyton Tolley on the male side for College Male Athlete of the Year. What does it mean to you? And of course, that's just, the tip of the iceberg of all the different nominees. What does it mean to you to have such a really deep talent pool in this area to be able to recognize and award each year?
I think this year's finalists, it was really challenging. We had over 50 for just the high school categories for male and female. We had over 50 nominees, and in our committee, it was tough for them to break it down and find those three. I mean, there's some people that weren't finalists that have had great careers and great senior years, and we'll focus that. It is a senior that the Lynette Woodard and the Barry Sanders Awards go to. And, I think you're going to see some of these names. Certainly we look forward to following them through the next 4 years of when they compete in college. But I think a lot of them have the ability to go beyond that. And, Addison Brown, who was a McDonald's All-American in basketball, she's going to Iowa State. She's been up there this summer working out and things. It really is. I always say it's a very special evening to be in that room, because you have, the 17, 18-year-olds that are just, they're getting ready for high school. And guys, let's all admit, going to college as an athlete today is a lot different than when we were going to college. The training that they are able to experience and have is so much better and stronger than it has and will ever has been, honestly. And then you mentioned the college athletes as well. And then, we bring in the finalists for the Buster Posey Award. And then we have other awards as well. Dylan Schmidt, the head football coach at Andale, he will be honored. He's 73-6 or something like that in the last 6 years. And his record is phenomenal. 4 straight state championships. And so it's a room of a whole lot of sports success and accolades. And it's a very special evening. And we're fortunate enough to be able to put it on.
All right, Kevin, before we let you go, again, it's Thursday, and people can get a hold of one of those 2 remaining tables by going to wichitasports.com. Is that correct?
Yes. Wichitasports.com. Go to the tab at the top that says awards and banquets, and you'll see the logo, and you'll be able to click that and follow your way to tickets, or they can just give us a call at 265-6236. We're happy to take care of them that way. But like I said, we have 2 tables left. We do have individual tickets on sale as well. If buying a table maybe a little too much, can't fill it, we certainly sell individual tickets. But we're going fast. We know that, and certainly appreciate the opportunity to come on with you guys and talk about it. Thank you.
All right, there's Kevin Jinks, Wichita Sports Commission President, CEO. We look forward to another successful banquet Thursday. We'll see you soon, Kevin.
All right, guys. Have a good one. Thank you.
Tommy, you'll be there. I will not be there this year, but we will be there as a collective at KWCH. It's a fun event. It's your first time, you said?
Yeah, I've never gone before. We have one of our Wichita Thunder players, Braden Watts, is a finalist for the Professional Athlete of the Year. So because I mentioned at the top of the show, everybody on the staff is in Vegas except for me. I get to represent the team at the banquet, so I'm looking forward to it.
Have you already begun to receive updates on how much fun everybody's having while you're stuck here?
Yep. I've gotten pictures of slot machines and table games and buffets and you name it. I'm getting it right now. And they all come back, I think, Thursday night. So I'm in it for a while here by myself. But you know what? Somebody's got to hold down the fort, I guess.
Are you secretly hoping that everybody's like hungover and suffering?
Well, that's really my only, the only ammunition I have is to tell all of them, they're like, oh, we're so tired. I'm like, hey, I feel great. I'm not hungover. I'm not tired. I'm good. I'm good to go. That's the only ammunition.
How long is the Vegas trip, by the way?
They
like
come back
Monday
on
through Thursday?
Yeah, it's a long one.
Oof. That's probably too long for a Vegas trip.
I agree.
At least you got that in your back pocket. All right, we'll
Give
come
me
back.
48 hours and then call it good from there.
That's the fatal flaw of everybody when they go to Vegas is staying that third day. All right, we'll come back. We'll wrap it up. Thanks to Kevin Jinks for hopping on real quick. That banquet on Thursday. We'll tell you what's on tap the rest of the day next on Sports Daily. All right, everybody, what's on tap today here on KFH? Jim Rome at 11, Bob and Jeff from 2 to 4, an hour of Maggie and Perloff before Zach Gelb at 5. And then you've got the Royals beginning a series with Cleveland, 7 o'clock. It is go time for the Royals to sort through what's tradable, what's usable down the future. That's all coming for the Royals tonight. You can hear it right here on KFH. Thanks to Kevin Jinks for jumping in. Don't forget, tomorrow we'll have Chrissy Bredbender and Paul Mills on, two coaches from the Wichita State world. So looking forward to that. Tommy, we'll talk to you then.
Sounds good. We'll see y'all tomorrow.
For Tommy, for Jad, I'm Jacob. Let's do it again on a Wednesday edition tomorrow.